Hello, all you freedom-loving people. Welcome to another episode of Front Page. I'm your host, Scott Cameron Goulet. President Trump has been nominated again for the Nobel Peace Prize, along with a core group of former Trump administration members. Congress is preparing to impeach President Trump for a second time, and there are some very interesting details here that are worth noting. I'll break it down more closely on the show. Pennsylvania's Secretary of State has resigned, and New York's Governor Cuomo is now in trouble too. Also, someone is going to sue Facebook over unfair competition, fraud, false advertising, and antitrust. Okay, let's get into it. Let's start with some good news in regard to our beloved former President Trump. Former President Donald Trump was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize on February 1st by an Estonia member of the European Parliament, Jack Madison. Madison posted on social media that in the last 30 years, Donald Trump is the first president of the United States who, during his tenure, has not started a war. Additionally, he signed several peace agreements in the Middle East, which have helped provide stability in the region and peace. The peace agreements in the Middle East that Madison mentioned are called the Abraham Accords. This is a joint statement between Israel, the United Arab Emirates, and the United States, and later with Bahrain and other Arab countries. This becomes the second time former President Trump has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. The first time was last year by Norwegian Parliament member Christian Tybring-Gjedde. Tybring-Gjedde commended him on his nomination last year for his merit. I think he has done more trying to create peace between nations than most other Peace Prize nominees. Separately, Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz nominated Trump's son-in-law and former presidential advisor Jared Kushner on February 1st. Alan Dershowitz argued that Kushner and his associate Avi Berkowitz helped negotiate the Abraham Accords. Therefore, he nominated Jared Kushner, his deputy Avi Berkowitz, as well as former U.S. Ambassador to Israel David Friedman and former Israeli Ambassador to the U.S. Ron Demmer for the Nobel Peace Prize for their roles in negotiating 4 normalization deals between Israel and Arab nations. Dershowitz wrote, "The Nobel Peace Prize is not for popularity, nor is it an assessment of what the international community may think of those who helped bring about peace. It is an award for fulfilling the daunting criteria set out by Alfred Nobel in his will." Kushner and Berkowitz, who was the Middle East envoy, were key figures in negotiating deals between Israel and the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco. Dershowitz wrote in his nomination letter, as cited by the Jerusalem Post, "These accords, which have brought about the normalization between Israel and several Sunni Arab nations, fulfill all of the criteria for the prize. They hold the promise of an even broader peace in the Middle East between Israel, the Palestinians, and other Arab nations. They are a giant step forward in bringing peace and stability to the region and even to the world." Kushner, in a statement on January 31st, said that he is honored to be nominated for the prize. Of course, Washington, D.C. is still hostile toward the Trump family. Congress sent the proposal for President Trump's impeachment to the Senate on January 13th. The Senate is expected to initiate the impeachment trial on February 8th. By rule, President Trump has until today to submit his first legal defense document against the impeachment to the Senate. The timing is stressful for President Trump's defense team, as the 5 lawyers on the previous defense team officially left last Saturday, January 30th. The next defense team was only confirmed on February 1st. Sources close to the situation told CNN that the lawyers left because they disagreed with President Trump. Trump wanted the lawyers to argue that there were massive problems in the 2020 U.S. election, while the lawyers focused on the legality of convicting an outgoing president. Trump did not accept their view. One day after the former president identified 2 new lawyers as members of the defense team, attorneys David Schoen and Bruce Castor. Schoen said, "It is an honor to represent the 45th President, Donald J. Trump, and the United States Constitution." Castor added, "I consider it a privilege to represent the 45th President. The strength of our Constitution is about to be tested like never before in our history. It is strong and resilient, a document written for the ages and will trump over the partisanship yet again and always. In fact, this impeachment is doomed to fail. There is a question of constitutionality here. First, can a former president be impeached, or can an ordinary citizen be impeached? This is what federal judge Ken Starr said in the interview by Mark Levin.
Can you try a private citizen who's been a civil officer of the United States? And have we ever tried a president of the United States after he's left office, sir?
No and no. The answer is emphatically not. The text of the Constitution to me is absolutely clear that judgment in cases of impeachment it runs to what? Removal and then possible disqualification. And so a former officer, by definition, can't be removed. That's the text.
So it's very clear that impeaching a former government official is unconstitutional. So this begs the interesting question, why would Congress go ahead with impeachment? Perhaps someone is really afraid, so afraid that they would do things at all costs to defame President Trump. They know how much President Trump is favored by the American people. Actually, don't we all know it? You know it, I know it, the whole world knows it, and of course, Biden knows it, and Congress knows it too. It makes perfect sense then for President Trump to disagree with lawyers using the defense that impeaching a former president is unconstitutional. Why avoid the main issue and ignore the actual facts? The elephant in the room needs its time on stage. Secondly, is the current impeachment process legal? The House's proposed impeachment process took only 7 hours to complete, with no hearings, no witness, and no debate. Republicans have harshly criticized the Democrats for such a practice as improper expediency and lack of due process. Anyway, it was before January 20th, so Congress wanted to do a rush job to have it done before President Trump left the White House. Does the Senate have the right to do this now? What a horrendous precedent.
My key point. The Senate is utterly without jurisdiction to try Donald Trump. And if they proceed to do so, they will, I believe, be running afoul, at least potentially, of the Constitution's specific express prohibition against a bill of attainder. Simply put, a bill of attainder is the legislative branch imposing a punishment on a prior citizen. And that's what disqualification would be all about.
Third, for the impeachment to pass, the Senate, at least 2/3 of the senators need to support it, which means a minimum of 67 votes to convict President Trump on January 26. Senator Rand Paul raised a point of order on the Senate impeachment trial, forcing the Senate to take a position on the constitutionality of the impeachment proceedings, and the vote resulted in 45 Republican senators that impeachment is unconstitutional, meaning that the impeachment trial will proceed but is unlikely to succeed in the end. And Congress's insistence on impeachment will only reignite the debate over the fairness of the election, which may not be a bad thing. This is another piece of news that reminds everyone about the election. Kathy Boockvar, Pennsylvania's Secretary of State and its top election official, will resign. Governor Tom Wolf said her resignation will go into effect on February 5th. The official reason for her resignation is her department's reported failure to advertise a proposed constitutional amendment that would extend the statute of limitations for survivors of childhood sex abuse to file action against their abusers. The Secretary's office must advertise the proposed amendment to the state's constitution, which voters would have decided at the ballot box in each of the 3 months prior to the 2020 general election. The office never did, Wolf said. She was at the center of a slew of failed lawsuits filed by former President Donald Trump and surrogates, all of which are related to the problems that occurred in the election. However, Wolf stressed that the resignation had nothing to do with Boockvar's oversight of the November 3rd election in Pennsylvania. Why does Wolf specially emphasize this? Interesting. Wolf will appoint Veronica de Graffenried, another Pennsylvania elections official, to serve as acting secretary. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is in trouble now. Representative Elise Stefanik has called on New York Governor Andrew Cuomo to resign if a federal investigation that she is seeking proves a criminal cover-up of COVID-19 related nursing home deaths. On January 28th, a report from the State Attorney General's office revealed health officials underreported the deaths by as much as 50% in some places. Stefanik told Jeanine Pirro of Fox News on January 30th, "I want to see a federal investigation because I think there were criminal acts conducted by the governor, by his senior staff. I want a very public and transparent investigation." She has characterized the revelations as a massive corruption and cover-up scandal at the highest level of New York state government. She believes the state commissioner of health, Dr. Howard Zucker, should tender his resignation following the release of the 76-page report. Stefanik also called for Cuomo's resignation if the investigation reveals any misconduct. Cuomo's administration has come under fire for his policy during the early months of the viral pandemic, where he directed nursing homes in New York to accept patients who were suspected of having the CCP virus, a novel coronavirus that causes COVID-19. The policy was rescinded in May 2020. Cuomo doesn't admit that it was his fault. Everybody did the best they could, he said. If you think there was a mistake, then go talk to the federal government. It's not about pointing fingers or blame. This became a political football. Separately, former federal assistant secretary in Trump's Human Services Department, Michael Caputo, issued a statement after Cuomo's remarks about the previous administration's policy to reporters. Early on, experts at the Health and Human Services Administration identified Cuomo's foolish executive order as a primary cause for thousands of nursing home COVID deaths in New York. Caputo said in a statement, "He's right. I called him out on it immediately. Cuomo is personally responsible for thousands of unnecessary nursing home deaths, and he must be held accountable." Before we move into our next stories about big tech, since January 20th, Front Page has been officially demonetized by YouTube. If you would like to support our show, please donate to donorbox.org/front-page. And please sign up for our newsletter so we can keep in touch. We here at Front Page thank you for your support. The censorship is getting worse and worse. A Christian organization has been suspended from Twitter for telling the truth. Rachel Levine, a Biden-appointed Assistant Secretary at Health and Human Services, is transgender. She is one of the few government officials openly admitting to her transgender status. In general, government officials are appointed based on their ability and character. It does not matter which gender they are. With Rachel Levine's openly admitting her transgender status, it has become even less of an issue. But to our surprise, Twitter shut down the Daily Citizen's account because they mentioned her gender. The Daily Citizen is under the umbrella of Focus on the Family, a Christian organization. Jim Daly, president of Focus on the Family, mentioned last week in his blog about the ongoing censorship that has taken place in the wake of a volatile election. Daly wrote in his tweet, "As I've noted before, big tech titans are the new emperors of the 21st century, wielding an inordinate amount of power by silencing individuals and organizations that don't comport or cave to their political or social point of view. This past week, Twitter locked the Daily Citizen for alleged rules violations, specifically that we had posted hateful content. It's simply not true. We did no such thing. The Daily Citizen's appeal to Twitter was denied." Daly listed in his blog other celebrities who were banned on social media, including Curt Schilling, an American former Major League Baseball right-handed pitcher who may not make the Hall of Fame today because of statements supporting conservative causes. Martina Navratilova, a Czechoslovak-born American former professional tennis player and coach, ranked as the highest singles in the world, lost her speaking in documentary opportunities for arguing that transgender male athletes should not compete in women's sports. Novelist J.K. Rowling, author of Harry Potter, was unable to publish her last book because she made distinctions between the sexes in her tweets. Rowling is an interesting example. She is an anti-Trump activist. I bet she couldn't have imagined that by throwing President Trump out of the White House, her own freedom of speech would disappear with him. Daly concluded, over the course of the last week, President Biden has been stressing the need for unity, but his actions since taking office are all about demanding uniformity. There appears to be no room for convictional disagreement. We will comply or be silenced. This is not a sad ending story, though. The Daily Citizen has received a great deal of support from allies who are writing to Twitter to declare their support for the Daily Citizen, telling Twitter the truth that a person's biological sex cannot be changed. They asked Twitter to reconsider its lockdown of the Daily Citizen from Twitter. The support campaign was launched by the Family Policy Alliance, and it's called Are We Next? They and supportive organizations and individuals are asking if they'll also be locked out of Twitter if they shared the same views. According to the medical literature, it's clear that biological sex is determined by the body's chromosomes and is innate. It is deemed medically impossible to change the chromosomes in one's body with present technology. What can be changed is only the appearance and the tissues or organs one may have. So, is it possible that even textbooks dealing with this part of knowledge will be banned in the future? Even with the protection of Section 230, the tech giants are not free from lawsuits. Conservative host Steven Crowder said on February 1st that he's suing Facebook over unfair competition, fraud, false advertising, and antitrust. Crowder attorney Bill Richmond said on Crowder's YouTube channel that the lawsuit is already initiated. The key remedy is injunctive relief. Stop unfair, deceptive acts. We're also seeking seven-figure monetary damages. The goal here is forcing honesty and clarity in policy application and enforcement, according to Crowder's website. Our broader point is that we are pro-business but anti-fraud. Facebook lured consumers and creators to spend money and provide data and views under the promise of not engaging in political, racial, or religious bias in enforcing their policies, but they have done so both expressly and secretively, and hence the suit. In the YouTube clip, Crowder said his November 3rd election live stream was cut off in the midst of its coverage. Crowder said he was never provided a reason for why the stream was taken down. They removed the biggest stream that has ever existed from the biggest platform that's ever existed with no reason, he said. At last, you'll be very happy to know that Trump's Political Action Committee, or PAC, has plenty of funds in its account to help the former president come back to Washington if he wants. Former President Trump started a political action committee called Save America just after Election Day. It has at least $31.2 million in its coffers. According to Save America's financial report filed with the Federal Election Commission on January 31st, it raised money primarily for grassroots responding to legal challenges over last year's election results. The spending was only $218,000 last year. Although Trump cannot use these funds directly for future personal campaigns, he can use them to influence midterm election campaigns, pay political consultants, or travel around the country. According to Politico, an affiliated joint fundraising committee, the Trump Make America Great Again Committee has also filed its report. Recent fundraising calls from that group have said that it is splitting its donations between Save America and the Republican National Committee, with 75% going to Trump's leadership PAC and 25% going to the RNC, Republican National Committee. After funding the RNC, Save America and Trump's campaign, the Joint Fundraising Committee still has nearly $60 million in its own coffers. Some of that money is likely earmarked for Save America. Rob Stutzman, a California-based Republican consultant, told Politico, the more money Trump stacks up in his committee, the greater his grip will remain on many elected Republicans who will fear those resources could be turned against them. Stutzman said that it should be no surprise that Trump has continued to fundraise well during this period. Okay, this is our show for today. Due to the increasing scrutiny and restrictions, please subscribe to our newsletter by clicking the link down below. If anything happens, we'll keep in touch and let you know where we have moved to. And again, if you like what you heard, please don't forget to like and subscribe and share this video with at least one of your friends, because everyone deserves to know the truth. Thank you for watching Front Page, and we will see you next time.